Hi, this is Corinne Saunders with Outer Banks Insider. Welcome to our first episode of Down the Road, where we interview community members who live down the road from you. This show is sponsored by CMG Home Loans in Kill Devil Hills, North Carolina, and our subscribers get early access. So to become a subscriber today, go to www.outerbanksnews.org. We're here today with Joan Collins. She is the Director of Outreach and Education for the Pea Island Preservation Society, Incorporated, otherwise known as PIPSI. And so, Joan, on Christmas Eve, we lost a pillar of the community who was your cousin, actually, Daryl Collins. And he was the president and the founder of PIPSI. So tell us about Daryl. Who was he and what was his vision for PIPSI?
Sure. Yeah, Daryl's loss to us, it was very, very devastating to our organization and to the community, and to, all those lovers of history. But Daryl actually was the founder of the Pea Island Preservation Society, Inc. We're known as PIPSI. And he and I were first cousins, only a few months in age apart. I'm a little bit older than him. We won't tell ages right now. But anyway, Daryl and I really only saw each other when we were young. When I would visit here, I was not raised or lived on Roanoke Island. I did not move here until about 10 years ago. But I always saw Daryl when I came, and I've been coming essentially all of my life. So to me, Daryl was just my cousin who I love dearly I love dearly, and I spent time with whenever I came. So he was the founder of the Pea Island Preservation Society, Inc. And actually, before this organization was formed, there was another organization. I'm having a little senior moment because I can't remember the name, but it didn't last for too long. Daryl ended up forming the Pea Island Preservation Society. And for those who might not know, the vision for moving the cookhouse building, our organization promotes the history of a man named Keeper Richard Etheridge and the Pea Island Lifesavers. And we manage and operate a small museum on Roanoke Island called the Cookhouse Museum. So it was Daryl's mother's vision to honor the Black history of the area, with this central figure, Richard Etheridge. And so she was instrumental in getting the cookhouse moved to Roanoke Island, and the cookhouse would have been the building where surfmen cooked and ate their meals at Pea Island. So that was moved to Roanoke Island, and she also was served as a town of Manteo board commissioner, and she died suddenly. And make a long story short, Daryl ends up assuming her position, running for office. So he also served as a town commissioner for several years.
In the town of Manteo,
where he grew up in the town of Manteo. So he just had this, this love of Roanoke Island, this love of this area. And as I said, I didn't spend a lot of time with him when I was young. I had heard of Daryl, and I had heard, that he was just this wonderful speaker, and that he talked about the Wright brothers. And this is something that I talked about at his funeral service. I didn't even get to hear him speak of the Wright brothers until, really it was after I had retired. And I'm sorry I hadn't heard him before that. But when I went to hear his talk about the Wright brothers, like many, I was kind of blown away. He can just kind of take this complex story and make it real. So he has, I always say he had two loves. Obviously the love of the Wright brothers, and you can imagine how knowledgeable he was of that history too. having worked with the Park Service for 42 years, most of which is a historical interpreter.
Right.
So he was, extraordinary in that regard. So he had this passion, and he also grew up, on Roanoke Island, listening to his elders, one of which would have been his mother, listening to people like his mother, Adele Collins, listening to people like Virginia Tillett. A lot of people know that name. Listening to people like his aunt, Naomi Collins. Those three, I always look to as the three that really did most in trying to bring the black history to life in this area. So Darrell was able to carry that on with the Pea Island Preservation Society. So what we do, our mission is to make this story of Keeper Richard Etheridge and the Pea Island Lifesavers broadly known. Because it's a story that, I always say it's really the centerpiece of the black history of this area. And a lot of people come here, but they don't come here having an understanding of this history, so we're trying to bring that history to light.
Right. And Keeper Richard Etheridge is now a little bit more well known than perhaps in the past. He grew up enslaved on Roanoke Island, and he was actually the son of his enslaver, and then later became, excuse me, once he became freed, he ended up in the highest rank running the Pea Island station.
That's correct. And Richard Etheridge's believed master is a guy by the name of John B. Etheridge. And a lot of people, if you're local, there are many locally known names that people still know. Etheridge happens to be one. But his believed master right was a guy by the name of John B. Etheridge, who also is connected to the history of the Body Island Lighthouse. Okay, he would have, the Etheridge family would have had property near the Body Island Lighthouse. John B. Etheridge at one point would have been the keeper of the lighthouse. And Richard Etheridge obviously would have worked for the Etheridges. But you're right. So Etheridge was born and grew up enslaved on Roanoke Island, and he once the Civil War breaks out, he ends up leaving the island, serves with the United States Colored Troops. The war ends, he comes back to Roanoke Island, and that's essentially where he starts his career. And he gets a job in the United States Life-Saving Service. And a lot of people don't realize that, and this is in 1880. So think of it, it's the South, 1880. It's not too long after the Civil War. And I was saying a lot of people don't realize that here on the Outer Banks, you did have blacks to serve at some of these stations. And as a matter of fact, the station that Keeper Richard Etheridge served at initially, the Body Island Life-Saving Station, would have been a station where blacks and whites worked. So he in 1880, he was selected to be the keeper, the commander of a nearby station, the Pea Island Station. Mm-hmm.
And so they were in charge. It was the predecessor to the Coast Guard. They were in charge of going out and rescuing people from shipwrecks with the equipment that they had at the time, which was obviously a lot less than we have now.
No automated equipment. So they did this purely, manual. And a lot of people really don't have a real appreciation for what the United States Life-Saving Service's role was. And, the contributions that they made in this area that's been phrased the graveyard of the Atlantic because of the number of shipwrecks that were here. Yeah, so tough stuff.
Yes, and the history is not only the community's history, but it's your family's history as well.
Very much so. As far as my family and the Pea Island Station, well, my father, Herbert M. Collins, he was actually the last person that was left in charge of the station. He was born in 1921, grew up on Roanoke Island. You know, I always tell everyone, think of who his role models would have been. You know, Richard Etheridge, and his great uncle actually was on the Etheridge crew that performed their most famous rescue, the rescue of the E.S. Newman. So his great uncle served under Etheridge. His grandfather, Joseph Hall Berry, served under Keeper Etheridge. So the ties run deep. His uncle, Maxie Berry Sr., was actually in charge of the station before when my father was assigned there. So and my grandfather, Marshall Collins, you know, wasn't a surfman, but he sometimes served as a substitute at the station. So you're right, the ties run deep with not only the Pea Island Station, but with the Coast Guard in general. My family has 400 years of combined service.
Right. And you and Daryl are both passionate about your family's history and your family's contributions to this.
Yeah, yes, we're passionate about both. You know, I always tell people because a lot of people know Daryl primarily for the Wright brothers, and for our organization, you know, it has been a struggle and a continued struggle to raise attention to this history. Which is not as popular, obviously, as the story of the Wright brothers and the story of the Lost Colony. But this definitely was Daryl's passion too, to try to, you know, do something creatively to bring this history to light. So, you know, one thing that we did that I think, you know, ended up helping us a lot was to create a program, a live program named Freedmen Surfmen Heroes that you know, I always say the part that Daryl ends up contributing to that live program, I always believed, you know, was the most special part of the program. At one point in the program, he, you know, he gets the audience, and our target audience really was kids. You know, we're trying to get kids to understand this complicated history. Because anytime you're talking about the story of the enslaved and you're talking about it here in this area, you're trying to explain why people have the same last names. I mean, it's a complicated history. It is. But he was able to create a part where kids had to answer questions and to describe after we told them this history what the character traits of these men were. And you know, it turned out, I think, to be the you know the most you know, emotional and thoughtful part of it, because you could really kind of you could sense that the kids really got it, that they understood the significance of the story. So yes, I definitely credit Daryl with coming up with that creative idea, because that was his. It was his idea to let them speak to what this history meant to them, and to award them gold medals, you know, kind of representative of the gold life-saving medal that Keeper Richard Etheridge and the Pea Island Lifesavers never learned that they had received. So it was, right. Yeah, it was very special having worked with Daryl in that regard.
Absolutely. And the Pea Island crew never learned of their medal because it was awarded 100 years after the famous rescue that they performed.
They performed over 600 rescues. Their most known rescue is the rescue of a ship, a schooner, the E.S. Newman, in the middle of the night during a hurricane. Right. This is what the historical record shows. And they rescued all 9 on board. The rescue, I think, starts at like 9 p.m. And by 1 a.m., you know, they're all safely in the station, in the Pea Island station. So yeah, so that rescue, which is deemed as one of the most heroic in United States life-saving service history, certainly, was never recognized until March of 1996. So about 100 years later, they posthumously were awarded the Gold Life-Saving Medal.
Right. I remember interviewing Daryl about that and him describing how these men swam out in hurricane waves and physically brought each person to shore.
Yeah, it's quite a story. It's quite a story, and the most believed reason that they were never recognized is because they were black. And if you understand the history of the United States life-saving service in this area, there were a lot of people that did great things. You've heard of the Mighty Midgets and the story of the rescue of the Merlot and other stories where lifesavers, surfmen, they did live to wear those medals on their chest. But that never happened to Etheridge and his crew. But our program, Freedmen, Surfmen, Heroes, is purposeful. It's to get people to think about, the story of freedom, what that meant in this context, to think about the role that surfmen played, what you're bringing up, that, think of how difficult that would have been at that time. So freedmen, surfmen, and heroes, yes, the heroes that the Pea Island surfmen were and became, and the heroes of all who risked their lives in such a way to save others. Yeah.
Yes, to rescue total strangers in hurricane situations.
We try to tell the story. Daryl obviously was the ultimate storyteller, and it started out actually with me and Daryl and someone a lot of people locally might know, someone named Keeper James and his wife. They were dressing in period dress and have been, talking about the United States Life-Saving Service in this area for a long time. But we kind of brought them on board with us for a while and, had a successful program. And then they left to do other things, and then we brought someone else on board, Coquetta, who's also a board member. That program, Freedmen Surfing Heroes, I think has helped us a lot in raising the visibility.
Yes, it's very nice. And Daryl also, when I interviewed him, he was talking about his family's history as being related to the surfmen, and also even further back, being related to the indigenous people from this area. And did you grow up knowing that history as well?
Well, I certainly grew up, Daryl too, with an understanding that we had Native American ties, definitely. As a matter of fact, on my great grandfather's side, he was someone by the name of Zion Hall Berry. But the family folklore was that he was a full-blooded Cherokee, and that he had fathered, a bunch of children to keep the Native American race alive. But we definitely, well, I grew up. I know, Daryl's father died when he was very young. I think 4 or 5 years old, and his mother, essentially raised him and his sister, but always an understanding of our Native American ties, always an understanding of the ties to the Freedmen's Colony. On Daryl's side, both on his mother's side and his father's side, you have people that are connected to the history of the Freedmen's Colony on Roanoke Island, people we have Native American ties related to the Roanoke Hatteras Algonquin speaking tribe. We have ties to the white history, of the area. Like names like Pew, is a name that's connected with Hatteras. It's also, you know, a family name that Daryl and I have. So yes, just this history that ties us to Native Americans, to the Black history of the area, and to the arrival of the English colonists.
Right. Yeah. And Daryl went on to receive the Order of the Longleaf Pine for his contributions to North Carolina. Were you present for that ceremony?
And, you know, I wasn't, and that is something too that I think just kind of speaks to the humility of Daryl, you know, and because I honestly did not even know that that had happened until long after it had happened, you know, kind of quite frankly. But, you know, just kind of speaks to the character of the individual too. You know, he wasn't the type to, um, you know, to boast about anything that he did. He loved his community, he loved his history, he loved family, and he was just a great individual, and just had this wonderful, you know, kind of spirit about him. I always used to tell him, I said, Daryl, you kind of transform yourself, because if you know Daryl or knew Daryl, he's kind of very laid back, you know, very gentle, kind of quiet and unassuming. But yet when you see him talk of the Wright brothers, when you see him explain the history of the Pea Island crew and Richard Etheridge, and speak about the Freedmen's Colony, you really see him coming to life. You know, the story was so passionate to him, and it has become passionate to me too, in a way that I didn't expect, and I didn't, you know. So I thank Daryl, you know, for many things, including you know, getting me more involved in understanding my own history.
Right. And so that Order of the Longleaf Pine Award is awarded by the governor for, it's one of the highest civilian honors that a resident of North Carolina can receive in recognition of their contributions. But you wrote a poem actually in honor of Daryl that's much more personal. So
I did. When you asked me to do this, I had actually, this is kind of a poem I had thought about, but had never completed. And then when you contacted me and said you wanted to talk about Daryl, it just got me wanting to finish it. So I'm going to read it to you. And it's called "The Storyteller May Have Passed, but the storytelling goes on." The historian he was, the historian he was meant to be, for Daryl McNary Collins, something everyone could see. The orator, extraordinaire, you knew he knew of what he spoke. He said it in a fashion for all who heard it to be woke. He grew up listening, seeing, learning what other people had to say about the history where he grew up, what past experiences teach today. Known most for his Wright brothers storytelling, he made that first flight so important and so real, telling the complexity of that sought out history, making it sometimes seem surreal. He knew the significance of this history and that of other history too, especially the history of the Pea Island Station. He knew what he wanted to do, to continue the vision of his mother, the beloved Dell Collins, Mayor Pro Tem, her vision to honor the history of others in the community, but not for herself, but for them. For those whose history is important, for those whose stories are not known, for those whose stories complete the picture, where their history could be shown, where their history could be seen, statuesque for all to see, for the storyteller Daryl McNary Collins, a place where storytelling would always be. Thank you.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Um, and so there's an upcoming event now at COA in honor of Black History Month, featuring a video series about the Pea Island.
Yes, there's a program at the College of the Albemarle in Dare called PIPSI Past, Present, and Future. And we're doing it obviously for Black History Month to make people aware of this inspiring story of Richard Etheridge and the Pea Island Lifesavers, and to show 3 short videos that we have done, we, the Pea Island Preservation Society, in an effort to creatively show and tell what this history is all about. So I hope you can make it. I hope others can make it. And we appreciate getting an offer to come to the College of the Albemarle again. So we're excited. February 22nd, 3 o'clock, College of the Albemarle, yes.
Wonderful. And as far as PIPSI's vision for the future, where do you see it going, and what are some of the most persistent challenges that you all have faced?
Well, our vision, is a vision where people come to the Outer Banks and they're excited to learn of this history, and they know it's here. So we have a vision, obviously, to make this history much more broadly known. Because I always say this isn't only local history. This is national history. So our vision is for it to be broadly known and for people to come here looking for it. As an organization, we've done a lot. We're proud of the amount of work that we've done over the years, but we also know we need continued help. So we're kind of in a transition phase. Obviously, our leader has passed. So we're trying to regroup and figure out what direction we want to move to continue to tell these stories and to continue to tell them in a creative way.
Right. And how can people support you?
Well, they can support us by, come to the College of the Albemarle on February 22nd. That's one thing. But they can support us by, coming to the Cookhouse Museum. We're not open, right now regularly, but we're open for groups, and they're also wayside outdoor exhibits outside. There's a prominent statue of Richard Etheridge. And, if you have a group, contact us and we'll try to get you in. We will get you in. We're just, as I said, kind of in a transition phase, trying to figure out where we want to go to continue to do great things. We're proud of our track record. We've created products for schools. A lot of more people certainly locally know who we are. And we want to do more. We always say we want to, continue to tell this story creatively. That's what the program at the College of the Albemarle is designed to do, to show some of the creativity through film. We've connected with someone that has a creative spirit that I think meshes with our creativity. So hopefully, I don't know if I've answered your whole question, but our vision is for people to know this history, to recognize it's important, to want to come and see it, and to help us in any way that they can to make it nationally known.
Right. So groups or individuals who are interested in touring the cookhouse can just reach out and call you guys for a tour to set it up.
Yeah, you can just look at our webpage and there's an email address, and we're responsive. Just contact us if you have a group that wants to come, and we know that the spring and summer is right around the corner, so there'll likely be people that want to come, and we want to encourage that. But we also and we'll talk a little bit more about this on the 22nd. We're looking for volunteers. We're looking for, people who can help and have the energy and the desire to really want to make this history much better known.
Right. And educators as well can reach out for materials from you all to help tell the story.
Yeah, educators can certainly feel free to reach out and to talk to us about the materials that we have used and materials that we are continuing to create and hopefully improve upon to tell, because we think this is a story this is a story that really is appropriate for all age levels. And interestingly enough, I think I mentioned that our Freedmen Surfmen Heroes program was initially aimed at kids, but we had just as many adults as kids. So we know that people are interested in the story. We just need to position ourselves to, get the type of help that we need to make it a national story at this point.
Wonderful. Is there anything else people should know right now?
No, I just thank you. Thank you for being, I understand I'm your first podcast.
This is our first episode.
Well, I feel special. I thank you for that. And I hope it all works out. And I hope you get a lot of interest in the Outer Banks Outs Insider. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Joan. It's been a pleasure having you here with us. Again, for all of our work, go to outerbanksnews.org. And thank you so much for tuning in.